let's talk. So the other day, I was at my computer, and someone on the local Discord server said, "Hey, what's the next non-garbed activity we're having? Because I don't have any garb." And that kind of reminded me that there's a conversation. Again, I can only speak for Stewart, but there's a conversation we don't have enough. And that is, actually it's two conversations, but that is, what is our expectation for historical costume in the SCA? When are you supposed to wear it, and to what benchmark are you supposed to wear it to? You know, what is the threshold that we're aiming for? And when are you supposed to wear it? When are you expected to pull garb out of your closet and wear it? And this is a long-standing tradition, but it's a very dynamic tradition. It's changed, and I know for a fact it has changed. It's changed a lot locally, and it's also different between groups, not just between kingdoms, but between groups. When I first joined in fall of '97, every populace meeting was garbed. And we had this joking mundanity tax. They called it a nudity tax, because if you're at an SCA event and you are not in garb, we say you're naked. But we called a mundanity tax or a nudity tax, and it was 25 cents. It was a quarter, and no one ever really enforced it. But occasionally, if it was certain social circles and someone showed up in street clothes, they would walk up and like, "Okay, you're naked, pay up." So every populace meeting was in garb, and a lot of the other meetings were in garb as well. We used to have every month we'd have a dance practice, dance night, which I remember was in garb for the first few years I was there. Some of the other nights we tended to do garb, though it was a little more lenient there. As a footnote, it took me a while to get garb, so for like the first year I was there, actually about the first 6 months, I got so sick and tired of the mundanity tax. I walked in at one point with a $20 bill and goes, "Here's my quarterly subscription, go away." But that changed a lot. And it wasn't an overnight change, but I can tell you some of what happened. First of all, our membership changed. Not we changed members, but the people that were there had life changes. Certain people got married. Certain people had kids. Certain people moved from one type of job to another. All of that affected work-life hobby balance. All of that affected income. All of that affected available time to do stuff. There were a number of people, probably 10 years later, we were populace only, and maybe half of us were in garb. And it wasn't the other half didn't care, is a lot of them were coming straight from work, or were coming straight from picking kids up from after school activities, or were, oh my God, just too damn tired between getting home from work, getting the kids home from school, getting them something to eat, and then getting them presentable so you could drag them to the SCA event. They're like, you're lucky we're dressed. I've seen that conversation a few times, actually. So, and that's not to say that one is better than the other, but it is definitely to say that even within a relatively homogenous group that had a relatively consistent core group of members, you see that change over roughly a decade's period of time. Another eye-opening example, I traveled out of Kingdom at one point. I actually went home to my parents, and they live in Northern Virginia. And I decided I was going to visit the local barony out there, so I showed up. Now I had my garb in my backpack because I didn't want to drive in garb. but I didn't see, I wasn't sure if they wore Garb there. And the internet wasn't what it is today at that point. So there wasn't a lot of social media posts or comments on their website about whether or not their populist meeting was in Garb. Well, I showed up, and it was all mundane clothes. There was no Garb anywhere, but they were, and there was also, interesting side note, all the populist meetings I am used to attending here in Onsteora, or at least the north of Onsteora, now Windheim, followed a very much a court model. Even if they weren't actually opening court, there was the landed nobles would sit in state, the herald would open the meeting, officers would step up to the front, and so forth. When I got to the barony of Stierbach at the time, it was totally different. It was very much a Robert's Rules of Order parliamentary style meeting. All the officers were sitting up front. Very much a club or business style meeting. And it was actually kind of interesting because they had a segment in the meeting where they asked, "Hey, if this is your first time at one of our meetings, can you introduce yourself?" And there were 2 or 3 people. It was a big meeting too. It was like 40 people in there. They had 2 or 3 people stand up and they introduced themselves with mundane names, and obviously it was their first or second SCA populist meeting. And then everyone looked at me, and I stood up and said, "I'm Lord Ivo Blackhawk of the, at the time I think it was still Shire of Moonshadow, Kingdom of Onsteora, Lanceman, First Lance, the Lion Dragon Guard." And everyone's eyes got big, not because I was some big to-do, but because they all, I was able to give a very SCA introduction. And they weren't expecting that, because they expected they either knew me or I'd be a new member. So that dynamic changes between groups. Now, as to when to wear Garb. If you're watching this video, you could be anyone from anywhere from, frankly, any point in time forward of this video. The only way to find out if Garb is expected at an event, activity, or class or whatever is to ask. And don't hesitate to ask. I will tell you that right now. Because it is such a fluid concept, because it is such a variable, they can shift even over the course of a year. Go on social media and say and ask, is Garb expected? Is it recommended? If you get an answer of wear Garb if you have it, yes, wear Garb if you have it. But if you don't have Garb, don't hesitate to go. If the answer is wear Garb if you have it, comma, then go. Don't let lack of Garb keep you away, because that's not the point of it. There are plenty of people. I will be going to several populist meetings for the next couple of months that I know my schedule, and it's going to be like, no, I'm not dragging Garb out of the closet. I've just got too much stuff going on. I'm sorry, I'm tired. I will see you there in jeans and a t-shirt. I'm not doing Garb right now. And I've done that for multiple meetings in the past. Now, when I was an officer, I made the point of wearing Garb because I consider that a requirement of my office. But I've been playing a quarter century. Guess what? I'm tired. Monday nights are not good for me. So when we did populist meetings, I was like, I'm wearing street clothes. I'm sorry. Now that segues into another quick conversation I want to have about your first Garb. If you are a new member or a returning member or a transplant or someone who just doesn't have a lot of Garb, there are a lot of people who, and rightfully so, they're a bit confused about, well, how do I get a costume? What do I wear? How do I wear it? That kind of thing. And I'm going to give you the pretty much the baseline starter package that you can go with, and that is an SCA T-tunic. Now, I've never made a T-tunic. I've bought plenty of them, but I've never made one myself. But the T-tunic is one of those things that historically, within actual history, we have hard and solid documentation that some form of T-tunic was used through a large swath of European and Asiatic cultures, and the fundamentals needed to make a T-tunic are the same fundamentals that go into much, much more elaborate garb, much more elaborate costuming or outfits, as it were, throughout the Middle Ages. So if you want to get a more elaborate outfit but have a modest starting budget, start with a T-tunic. And if you don't know how to make one, that's fine. There's probably some SCAer who either has one they're willing to sell you or maybe loan you, or there's an SCAer who's maybe willing to sit down with you and help you make your first garb. And if you're wondering how a T-tunic will look, this is a T-tunic. This is a standard linen T-tunic that I wear all the time, and it looks fine. I wouldn't wear this necessarily for court, but I've been called into like midday courts or morning courts in this outfit before. As you can see, it looks fine. Adornment, accessories are what make the outfit. Let's be absolutely fair. But a T-tunic is a perfectly acceptable piece of outfit, and it's has a T-tunic. You can show up to an event or a meeting or a practice or whatever in jeans and a T-shirt and pull a T-tunic over it, throw your belt around the waist, and you're good. Either gender, however you want to present, is fine. The T-tunic pattern, if you lengthen the hem, it will pass for what we would consider a modern day dress. Now, quick side note, there's a really famous brass rubbing that shows, I believe it was a wood carving originally. Don't quote me on that. But it shows a husband and wife in, I want to say 12th century garb. And these are well-to-do individuals. These were, I believe, nobles. And with the exception of the faces and the inscriptions on the carving, their clothing is identical. They're both wearing a long T-tunic style gown that goes down to their ankles. They both have hoods on, and they're both holding their hands in prayer. I think the only difference in those outfits in real life, for whoever the couple was that modeled for this, or whatever couple is being depicted, was probably the hem, or probably the cut on the shoulders and the waist to fit any body proportion differences. But men wore full-length outfits, and that was considered at some points the height of masculinity. Full-length, what we would consider dresses. Robes is another more appropriate term. And the pattern for those is largely T-tunic. And women wore, the wealthy women or noble women or upper gentry, at least in Europe, wore identical outfits. And those would be considered dresses today. And if you adjusted the gusset, the one of the side panels that go in higher up in the arm, that creates a larger blousing effect. And now you have, the foundations for a more late period dress. I don't want to get too far into sewing because I'm not a sewer. I sew a little bit, I tinker, I don't do garb. My point is that if you are looking for garb, start with a T-tunic. If you're looking for your first piece of garb, if you're looking for your first outfit in the SCA or something to tide you over until you decide what you want to wear, start with a T-tunic, and you can build out from there. Because a T-tunic goes with just almost anything. It may not necessarily be your period, but it'll get you through almost any SCA event. And it's a great foundation. If you want to learn to sew, start with a T-tunic, because all of the techniques that go into making a T-tunic, you build off of those techniques for measurements, cuts, and seams. You build off those techniques to make more advanced garb. So I'm hoping I answered some questions. I'm hoping that this helped you better understand garb and when to wear it and who to ask and when to ask, and maybe give you a little bit of direction on what to look for in your first outfit if you don't have one already. If you have any questions, please put them down below. You can also always reach out to any of your local officer corps, or if you're really new to the SC and you don't know who to ask for your hospitaller or your seneschal. I know different kingdoms use different terms. It might be chatelaine, but ask for a local officer and ask questions there. That's what they're there for. That really is all I have to say on this one. I'm hoping that answers some questions for you. I'll see you at the next event, but until then, goodbye and God bless. If there are two things I've learned that drive videos these days, it's controversy and engagement. Now, I am never going to fly the controversy flag on a regular basis. It's not what I'm here for. It's not the content I want to make, and I really don't think it helps any of us. But let's do engagement. If you like this video, please go down in the comments and leave a comment. Make sure to share the video. And last but not least, easiest of all, make sure to like the video. That helps drive the algorithm. It helps get the video views and helps promote this material. Thank you very much.